everybody. As Councilmember Wynn said, my name is Bryan Noblett. I'm the police chief. I've had a chance to meet, I think, quite a few of you in the room, which is nice. It's good to see you all again. Thanks for being here. Just before we go into anything, and we're really just going to answer your questions more than anything else tonight, but I want to say a couple things. The first is, you know, public safety doesn't happen in any community without your involvement. We can't do it alone. I think you know that. We have, we have only so many officers out there at any given time, and it takes all of us working together to keep the community as safe as possible. I know that seems like a very simple statement, but I like to say it often because it's true. And I appreciate all of you, pulling yourselves away from whatever else you had going on this evening to be here, to either have your questions asked and answered, or just to be here, just to hear a little bit about what's going on. Because the more informed you are, the better we're going to be together, for sure. So I can tell you a little bit about some things going on in the department that might help, especially they might address specifically some of your questions about crime that you may have. The biggest initiative I want to start with tonight is we just kicked off, literally just last week, what we're calling ILP. ILP stands for Intelligence-Led Policing. Some of you may be familiar with a model of crime analysis called CompStat. CompStat is a crime analysis model that's been utilized in a lot of other cities across the country. It started actually in New York at the New York Police Department many years ago under Bill Bratton and some other folks. It's traveled to Los Angeles, a lot of cities, so it's not a new concept. We don't call ours CompStat, but it's essentially the same. What that means is every 2 weeks we get our command staff and key members from throughout the organization together to talk about crime in the city. And not just crime in general, but we identify a couple of major crime patterns that we see happen. And we bring all these minds together, we align our systems within the organization to support working really diligently and putting all our effort on making an impact on those 2, 3, maybe 4 things. And then we hit them hard. Again, we align our systems. We make sure if a situation requires more motor officers, we make sure that we have more motor officers out there. We bring everybody together, and the agreement that we broker inside the organization is that there's no egos involved. The expectation organizationally is that everybody brings their resources to the table so that we can quickly and immediately and positively impact these things that are affecting our residents in a timely manner. And I know that might sound commonsensical, but really we found that if we don't do that, if we don't get together every couple weeks and focus on these couple of important issues and timely issues that involve really good data analysis, by the way, and I'll talk to you about that in a second, then what we could find ourselves doing is just putting out fires and just running out and okay, we put a Band-Aid on this, and then something happens over there, and then we go address that, and we're not really working the major issues. And sometimes, if you like anything in life, if you deal with something while it's in its infancy or in a smaller state, then it stands to reason that it's not going to grow into something that's going to turn into a major issue or a major plague to our city. So that's a new development that literally, like I said, we just started that last week, and you'll be hopefully gratified or happy to hear that the very first task that we assigned to the team were the robberies on the footbridge in that general area. And we've got some information that we'll share with you tonight on where that stands. But we've made some real good progress with those. So in addition to that, I mentioned that we have a higher level of crime analysis now than we had in the past. We hired a new analyst. She had experience at another agency with doing this enhanced analysis and this organizational kind of delivery of it at another agency. So we were able to hire her from where she had been previously. She's been super helpful. And so the plan now is we have, like I said, we have these internal meetings every 2 weeks. And then what we'll do is we'll sit down next Wednesday. We have them on Wednesdays. And we'll sit down and we'll all find out, okay, well, how effective have we been over this past 2 weeks in addressing these issues that we've identified? And so we'll have data to support whether we've been effective or not. Did we make any arrests? Have there been any more instances of whatever the violation is? Have we written citations if it's a traffic-related matter? There's any number of quantifiable measures that we can look at to let us know whether we've been effective. So that's a really good development that I'm happy to be able to report to you. The other thing that we're doing is, in this back room here, and it's not done, or I'd take you back to show you, but we're building what we're calling a real-time information center. And that's essentially a very large room that's going to have one entire wall that will be devoted to a monitor. And on that monitor, we're going to overlay, I don't remember the name of the software, I apologize, I'm not good with that stuff. But essentially, we're going to overlay the map of the city, our beat map of the city. And on that map, there will be icons and indicators for where there are video cameras that we're aware of, whether they're our cameras, whether they're, in some cases, private cameras, whether they're retail center cameras, traffic cameras, what have you. And the idea there being, as officers are responding to calls for service, we're going to be able to have somebody in there that's going to say, okay, because they're going to be monitoring the radio traffic, and they'll be able to identify, okay, these officers are going here, you know, let's just say it's a park, and there's supposed to be a robbery or a big fight. That's a better one in progress. And oftentimes, when the officers go to these large fights, they get mixed signals from folks calling in about whether there are weapons, how many people there are. You know, believe it or not, some people will look at a group of 10 and they think that looks like 100. And so we'll get these conflicting reports. So to have a room like that with somebody watching that video in real time to be able to inform the officers as they're responding, it's going to make their response safer, for one, and more informed. But it's also going to provide us with a lot of intelligence on you know, what's, and it's not the kind of intelligence, I feel like I should pause here and tell you, it's not the kind of intelligence that we're not going to be peering in anybody's backyards or anything like that. These are all publicly placed, publicly recognizable and accessible cameras. But there's a lot of potential community safety upside in having them done. So those are a couple of the big things that we have going on now. We're still adding staff. Our sworn staffing right now in the city is 146. That's from top to bottom. I have a budget request submitted for the coming fiscal year. I don't want to jinx it, but you know, I've requested in the neighborhood of a handful of police officers, which is good. And we need to. We've got a very supportive council. I don't say that just because we have one in the room, but the truth is, they recognize that we need to grow. I think a lot of us recognize that, and they've committed to that, which I appreciate a great deal. One of the constraints that we have on our growth, truthfully, is our space. We operate in a very confined space over here. This is one of our buildings. Across the parking lot is our other building, and we have, you know, roughly 230, 235 employees in these couple of buildings, and in some cases they're stacked up like cordwood. And so we're really, as we add staff now, we have to do that a little bit strategically, knowing what the space constraints are. So that's another thing I'm really happy to say is the city manager's been super helpful, Mr. Jason Behrman. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to meet him. He wanted to be here tonight, by the way, but he just had a conflict, so I did tell him that I would mention that. But Mr. Behrman's been very supportive of our space needs. He recognizes that we need to do something. So just today, we had another in a series of meetings with a consultant that's actually analyzing our needs, analyzing our existing spacing, and then trying to take an immediate, a 5-year and a 10-year look at what we need to do to continue to grow smartly and intelligently. So that's underway as well. So I could go on and on and on. I don't want to do that because there's other people here to talk to you about specific questions that you might have. Just real quickly, I just want to introduce a few of our folks that are here. I know you'll have to turn, so I apologize for that. But the motor officer on the end, that's Officer Dustin Poor. He's, like I said, he's one of our motor officers, which infers that he rides motorcycle for a living, which is a pretty cool job.
It is.
And then in the center there is CSO Chris Packwood. Chris is one of our crime prevention officers. And so Chris, if you have any questions tonight relative to crime prevention, Chris is one of our in-house experts on that. And then on the end, we have Sergeant Carlos Vina. Carlos oversees our POP unit, our problem-oriented policing unit. Carlos has also been kind enough to do some research on the robberies so that he could respond to any questions that you might have, or